Good evening, fellow Plexers. This video goes out to Joan with a question in the Plexaholic support group about better organizing her movie media for Plex. So, what I want to talk about is always FileBot. Joan, I'm not going to go into FileBot in this video. I have plenty of other ones, but FileBot can quickly rename your media. And before I get into Plex's naming support articles, I want to talk about trash guides. If your server may ever lead to a trash guides install, you want to set your structure up to enable atomic moves. This is their example. I'll let you find this guide and study it. I've simply gone to trash guides and I've gone into how to set up for, and you can choose any of these. I just happen to choose unraid. They're all going to lead to the same suggested structure. Because these would be NAS installs on shared network storage, you'd have a shared folder named data. They're suggesting one or the other of these for your incoming acquisition. And then, of course, you'd have a media folder. And what that does is if you had a separate shared folder for incoming files, and another one for movies, and another one for music, and a final one for TV episodes, to copy from the acquisition folder to one of these media folders happens across the local network, and it's slow. If you've ever had two hard drives in a computer and you copy one file to the other, you know it's a slow process. If you move a file on the same hard drive, it's instant because that file never really moves. Only its location marker moves. Well, the same thing is true with a shared media folder. The original folder could land in this subfolder, and when the right program renames and moves it to this subfolder, it's instantaneous because the file never really moves within that shared folder, just the marker to it does, and that's an atomic move. So whatever you do, get Plex set up the right way in case you go on to a larger automated install. So now let's talk about shared storage versus local storage. So this is just one media folder, media-public domain. And it's named that way because a lot of Plex installs eventually get moved to a Docker container. So keep your file structure the way you might need it for that eventual transition, because there's less things to have to adjust for down the road if you're starting off this way. Now I'll go to my shared network folder on my Synology 1520 plus NAS. In this example, I'm using a shared folder called Media PD versus a local folder called Media-Public Domain. If I click into this shared folder or this single media folder, you'll see similar structure. I like using a sort folder for each library type. And you do not use uppercase letters or spaces until you get to your actual Plex media folder, and that's just a general Linux rule. I don't know why, I just follow it. Matt Peterson over at Dockerholics taught me that rule. And I think Space Invader 1 says the same thing in a lot of his unraid videos. Now, there's not much chance of having multiple music libraries, so I've named this folder more simply. Now, you could have a folder here, or you could just start putting media in this folder. So this is organized more like I have it on my real system, but you can do it either way. So in the movie library sort folder, you could have these individual movie libraries and maybe a few more, maybe movie-stand-up, movie-concerts. There is all kinds of media that you might be surprised at that's listed at both IMDb and TMDb as movies. You got a few concert Blu-rays or DVDs, they're listed in both databases as either a movie or a documentary. If it's a true documentary that has a lot of concert footage, you probably want to put it in your documentary movie library. If it's a true concert where there's not really much going on besides watching the artist on stage, that would go in a movie concert library. Let's go to TV show libraries. Maybe you have 50 anime shows that most of your family and friends aren't interested in, but 2 or 3 are. Those few that are interested can pin this to their Plex home, and everybody who's not interested could unpin it. Just like kids' TV shows. They could unpin those if they don't have little kids. But if you're a grandparent like I am, with 2 little grandsons, well, my son and daughter-in-law have this pin highest on their Plex home. And then, of course, the main TV show library that everybody would have pinned. So to segregate things that are totally to segregate things that are totally unlike, not unliked, is not a bad thing to do. Because not everyone is interested in the same sort of content. Or you could just put all your TV shows in one main folder and all your movies in one main folder. But as your server grows, this little bit of segregation makes more sense. Okay, so that's basically it. Atomic moves are something to plan for. And definitely if you're using a NAS, let me back up here. All right, here's the shared folders on this Synology NAS. My Docker containers are in here, the application folders. This is a shared media folder of public domain media that I use for Plex videos. Here's my real Plex media. Here's a package install of Plex server that's not running now on that NAS. So you definitely do not want a shared media folder for acquisitions, and then a separate shared media folder for movies, and then another one for music, and another one for TV shows. Because anything that has to be moved in between those shared folders is going to copy across your network and be slow. If you have one shared folder with everything in that, including a place for your acquisitions to land and be renamed and moved out, then you're speeding the whole process up. So just plan for that. Even though you might not think you'll use it, you're better prepared. And also keep the lowercase and no spaces rule going right until you get into the actual media, and then return to normal naming conventions. So Joan, I hope this isn't disjointed. I'm not a pro YouTuber, but I'm passionate about Plex, and this is going to be a humble brag, but I have very little trouble with my Plex server, and the number one reason for it is I know all these guides, all these support articles, well, if not all of them, a lot of them, like the back of my hand. And even though you could deviate quite a bit from these naming guides, I think it's always best to stick to Plex's naming guides. I jazz it up a little bit. I use source IDs, and like this section says to put optional info for TV show episodes into brackets to have Plex ignore it. Well, I do the same thing in my movie library, but I already know that Plex in a movie library is ignoring anything after that official separator when they talk about versioning someplace. Someplace they talk about versioning, and now when I want to end the file, I can't find it. All right, so versioning would be like this, but instead of a one movie split across 2 files, it would be maybe 1080p, 720p, SD. And Plex would scan those 3 versions in as the same movie that you then choose which one to play from the movie menu itself. So anyway, Joan, that's about it. I have other videos if you're interested in FileBot. It'll save a lot of time renaming things, and you'll end up with structure like this if you use my full expression. All right, everybody, thanks for watching, and happy Plexing.